Thank you for tuning into this last video on sentencing, and in particular prisons and jails. Now, jails are for temporary housing. It's for less than a year, and it's not meant to keep someone there for long term. Whereas prisons, any sentence that's over a year is going to be sent to a prison. And we can get into a little more detail about this, but really they start sorting people into different types of prisons. And the type of prison kind of is based on the seriousness of the crime, the risk of criminal conduct in prison, the need for treatment, whatever they really need to do with that respective case. So someone that might be, a mass murderer is not going to be put in the same type of prison with a white collar criminal. And someone that maybe needs psychological treatment is not going to be put in the same facility as a juvenile offender. There's all different types of prisons to house different types of people. And we're going to focus in on 4 different types of prisons as kind of the key different areas. For example, there is a maximum security prison. And a maximum security prison has a lot of attention to security and surveillance. So there's surveillance cameras, there's security systems, they have solitary confinement if anyone gets out of hand, they have frequent pat downs, and they have checks to make sure that everyone's in the right spot. It's a very controlled environment overall. And that's what you want in a maximum security because you tend to have people that are more violent offenders. You tend to have people with higher sentences in a maximum security prison. You're not going to see white collar criminals here. You're going to see more hardened criminals. But there are other prisons. For example, there's medium security prisons where you're going to see most of the population. It's more interaction. You'll have more chances for education. You'll have more chances to rehabilitate because in a medium security prison, you're more likely to have a lesser sentence. You didn't have as heinous of a crime, so you're not going to be receiving as harsh of a punishment. In a maximum security prison, people are going to be in there for 20, 30, 45 years, life. Medium security, you're going to see a lot of people that are seeing a much lesser sentence. But in a minimum security prison, it's a very different world. Minimum security tends to be reserved for non-violent offenders, and especially white-collar criminals, because it's really different to see someone in prison that's maybe there for like fraud, as opposed to something that's violent like an assault or murder. You don't necessarily want those groups together because it's going to lead to more violence in prison, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So they have minimum security prisons, which are kind of like a college campus. There's a lot more interaction. They could have more activities, more outside time. Really, the higher you get up in security, the less outside time and the less activities and the less education programs there are. The last type of facility is the Supermax facility, which I don't think I have on these slides here, but let me just talk about for a moment. A Supermax facility is going to be for the worst of the worst offenders. So it's going to be folks that have typically done murder. And it tends to be you are in your cell for 23 hours of the day. It's pretty much like solitary confinement, but all the time. You have the worst offenders in these Supermax facilities, and that means they can't necessarily have the level of interaction that you would expect. So a Supermax facility, you definitely got to know this. And I know it's not necessarily on these slides here, but make sure you're listening in. Supermax has the worst of the worst, and it's very, very, very controlled to the point that you have very limited time outside your cell. And when you are outside your cell, you're still not necessarily interacting with other people. It's kind of like solitary confinement all the time. Anyway, thank you for tuning in. Hope these videos were informative for you.